anybody else on? Hello? Hello?
Hello, William. We can hear you, sure we can.
Very good. Right, we're in business then.
Aye, that's the
good.
job.
Chair, are you happy that I start then? Okay. To all members of Environment and Regeneration Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of Environment and Regeneration Committee, which will be a hybrid socially distanced meeting to be conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the main hall at Guildhall on the 15th of September at 4 p.m. And I'll take the attendance. Alderman Morris Devaney.
Here, Karen.
Thank you. Alderman Derek Hussey.
Aye, online, Karen.
Thank you. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Here, Karen.
Thank you. Alderman David Ramsey.
Here, Karen. I'm just on my way. I'm here. I'm driving here, but I'm on my way. I'm here now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor John Boyle.
Here and in the chamber.
Thank you. Councillor Tina Burke. I think we've. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
Online, Karen.
Online. I think it's Councillor Emma McGinley, isn't it?
I'm here. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Edwards.
There's apologies.
Sorry, apologies. Thank you. Yep. Councillor Rachel Ferguson.
Here, Karen, online.
Thank you. See you there. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
Sure, Karen.
Councillor Dan Kelly, I know, is on his way in. Councillor Rory McHugh.
Yeah, I'm here, Karen, but not in person, unfortunately. I couldn't make it down to the Guildhall today, but we'll see how it goes in terms of chairing the meeting remotely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Maeve O'Neill.
Here, online.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill, and Councillor Brian Tierney.
Here and on the chamber, Karen.
Thank you very much. Chair, would you like me to read the broadcast statement for hybrid meetings?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that the meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to be filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council's privacy notice may be found on the Council website. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Karen. And members, before we go on to the business of the committee, can I also just remind members that to verbalise your declarations of interest and to provide all relevant details at the meeting, i.e. the nature of the interest, if it's pecuniary or non-pecuniary, and what agenda item it relates to. Because I'm asking members just to note that committee members do not have access to the chat box that remote members have, so that's why we're requesting that. And also members that because committee members won't be accessing WebEx and can therefore not insert proposals into the chat box, can you therefore email your proposals? Now this is for committee members only, to committee.section@derrystrabane.com, and then obviously we'll allow a little time for the committee secretary to process that proposal. Okay, members, our next item is any declarations of members' interests. Nobody forthcoming, so move on then to our next item, which is the presentation by Farmers for Action. It's a verbal update, and I'd very much like to welcome our presenter here today, whose name is William Taylor, I believe. William, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Normally we allow for 10 minutes, and then obviously we then open it to the floor for members' comments or any queries that they may have. So, William, as I say, you're very welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Perhaps a little bit of background might be a help. I'll try and be brief. I'm conscious that I'm speaking to the environment and regeneration part of the council, and that's the aim, is to present the case on behalf of family farmers in Northern Ireland. Farmers for Action was originally born out of the fuel strike of 2000, the year 2000, those of us who are old enough maybe to remember it. And Farmers for Action was set up about a year later by David Handley, who was involved in the protest. David is also a farmer, and after the fuel protest, he thought that they could come together and set up Farmers for Action to do a similar thing, perhaps to help farming families get properly paid for their produce, which was a big issue back then and has got even bigger since then until now. So I joined Farmers for Action in 2002, and I'm coordinator of Farmers for Action in Northern Ireland. And I also coordinate Northern Ireland farm groups, and also Fairness for Farmers in Europe, which is 10 farm organisations across these islands. And also North-South farm groups is another one that I also am coordinator. But Farmers for Action is my native organisation. And in Farmers for Action, we actually went along with everyone else in Fairness for Farmers in Europe and took a case to the European Ombudsman on the unfairness of Brazilian beef coming in back in 2007 that was not fit for standard, as the European Veterinary Office stated. So that turned out to be a success. So what we're all about really is trying to get, on behalf of Farmers for Action, fairness for farmers across the UK and further afield if we can manage it. So that brings us up to today, and we've obviously gained a lot of experience in between. And we come to the conclusion, and then I'll back it up, that as far as the environment is concerned, family farmers are key to maintaining that. And we do not want to see factory farms emerging. Now, we have enough of a hint of those in Northern Ireland currently. Therefore, the urgency for our legislation bill, which is currently with the Agriculture Committee at Stormont. It's called the Northern Ireland Farm Welfare Bill, which you'll see how all this links together in a minute or two. The Northern Ireland Farm Welfare Bill seeks, if enacted, to make it law that farmers have to be paid a minimum of the cost of production, inflation linked, plus a margin for their produce. Now, according to the Gosling report, and many of you will know Paul Gosling, done in 2016, this would create 10 to 20,000 jobs in Northern Ireland. It would also retain a lot more money in the economy. And the aim of the bill is to force the big corporates to lower their profits. That's the big food corporates, shall we say, corporate food retailers, corporate food processors, and corporate food wholesalers. And I should say, to a lesser extent, the corporate food processors. So in effect, the problem for family farmers then being able to deliver on the environment and regeneration is that they need income to do this. And we're all very conscious of the pressures on family farmers. First of all, we had the banking crisis in 2010, and that banking crisis caused a lot of hurt for a lot of farming families. And then we come along next, and we had COVID-19, which erupted as we all know the story with it, and that too caused a lot of problems and still is causing problems for family farmers. And alongside that, we have climate change, and climate change actually has been causing farmers quite a lot of problems, I would say, since the early 80s. And to make it clear, the reason that farmers across these islands have been able to cope with climate change to date, and I'm talking about extreme weather that makes the land wet and very difficult to work on, etc., is in fact to do with a lot of the big machinery that you see on the roads and other places. Bigger wheels, bigger tires that carry better, etc. In 1985, there was a very wet year, and farmers nearly didn't make it through that year. And then subsequently, the big machinery started to come along after that and helped us out. But the question I want you to keep in the back of your mind is, what do we do when the big machinery isn't able to work? And also that goes two ways. It could be a problem with too much rainfall, which has happened certainly with what happened down through Eglinton only a couple of years ago, and in Tyrone. Now, then we have the other side of it. As we had this spring, it got very dry, and fortunately the rain came just in time this time round. So in other words, what's ahead of us, what's ahead of family farmers with COVID-19, with climate change, and all the other problems that go along with trying to farm, then you can understand that this cannot be done without farmers getting properly paid. Now, a statistic for you, just the last statistic that we had, and then the government shot the messenger, the UK government that is, was in 2013, 25% of farming families across these islands were living below the poverty line. Now that's quite a stark figure, and we would maintain that's worse now, actually. And you know, that's bad enough to cope that, but alongside that, do remember they have to try and run a business. So, you know, that gives you some insight as to the situation. And of course, there are exceptions, but remember, 60% almost of our family farmers in Northern Ireland are part-time. So many of them are working off the land. Their wives who are needed at home usually have a job. The farmer himself might be part-time, he might be full-time elsewhere, and then he comes home to do his farming in the evenings and weekends. And you know, this has carried them through up until now, but it is getting harder and harder and harder, in that, in spite of farmers and their wives bringing in outside money, the farm still, in many cases, is not adding up. So on average, family farmers' income for beef, dairy, or beef and milk and many other commodities, potatoes, etc., on average would need to rise by about 60% to get them near to what the proper cost of production should be. And that's what the bill seeks to do. And in addition, the Northern Ireland Farm Welfare Bill has a climate change clause in it that means that if, for the sake of argument, an abattoir or a meat company decided to source beef outside of Northern Ireland, and remember we are 80% export, then they could only do that if they could not buy that supply within Northern Ireland. And they would have to have 3 items of proof to prove that. So the bill is much more than just a bill that you pass in the night. If enacted, this would really make a big difference to Northern Ireland. And before you ask me the question, no, it wouldn't make a difference to the price of food to consumers, simply because the bill aims to force the large corporate or the large food corporates to lower their profits. That's the idea. Currently, as we all are attending this meeting, Boris Johnson, nor Stormont, nor the Welsh Parliament, nor the Scottish one control the retail price of food. The big corporate food retailers control it. And that, what controls them is, for example, Tesco watching Sainsbury's, watching Asda. They do that automatically. So our bill is really to put a line in the sand that they can't keep forcing price cuts down the line to processors, and then they come back to the family farmer. And of course, he has nobody to pass on his price cuts too. So, you know, this has been tolerated now for decades, and it's now come to a head. And we have concluded, along with a lot of other farm organisations that I've explained that we work with, that legislation going forward is the only way. And our farmers are already doing their bit for climate change. And thankfully, there is good news coming along with that, that innovation is going to sort out the meat industry that gets so much flack for too much methane produced. It now turns out that the methane that animals produce is biogenic methane, unlike all the flares that go off in Nigeria and the oil fields, where it's stated that I think anyone in Nigeria is no far than half a mile from an oil flare. And then you have China emitting 28% emissions with fossil fuels and coal-fired, coal mines that they're opening on a weekly basis. So, you know, this is good news for the farming end, that at least we've now starting to get a bit of weight off our shoulders, that cattle are not the demons that they have been made out to be. And also, in addition, there is good news from Cork that there is a new seaweed that has been worked on sometime, even from New Zealand and back to Cork, and they have now discovered that a very small amount of this in animal feed will lower methane emissions by 98%. Now, that is all happening as we speak. So the biogenic methane actually goes into the atmosphere and disappears in 10 years and goes round in a circle, as all good things in nature do. I always say, if you want to find a solution, look to nature. It's been there before all of us. So, of course, it comes back to the fact that what nature didn't do was take millions and millions of tons of fossil fuel out of the Earth's core. And that is where it all goes wrong. These emissions that we're all suffering from around the world, and we're all in this together, that's for sure. 75% of the emissions are due to fossil fuels. So you can see how this all links together. So farmers actually, between new methods of spreading slurry and scrubbers to reduce ammonia emissions, etc., we've already begun the drastic action needed to stop accelerated climate change. And there's a lot more regeneration to do. Farming is going to have to change along the way to get this all to work. And to do that, farmers need paid, and we can deliver. So that's basically the story from our end, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have to expand on this. And if there's anything I haven't covered, Mr. Chair, please do tell me, or something more that you would like to hear.
Chair, I don't think we have any comments from members. I think that's Councillor O'Neill. Chair, do you want her to come in?
I have Councillor Hussey and Alderman Hussey and Alderman Kerrigan. Take those two first.
Chair.
Go ahead, Derek.
Sorry, Chair, I think Councillor O'Neill is ahead of me. I'm looking in the chat box here.
You go on ahead, Councillor Hussey.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, William, for the presentation. Just I suppose a couple of things. I'm sure you're aware we've also had a presentation from the Ulster Farmers Union. Can you outline to us what liaison, I think it's Farmers for Action, has with what is probably the major farming union in Northern Ireland? So what sort of liaison do you have with them? And are there any differences in approach that you feel we should be aware of? You talked about Nigeria there. You said half a mile. It's actually 4 kilometers from each of the flare zones, because I was watching a program about it last night.
Thank you. Your memory is better than mine. I knew it wasn't far, but I just couldn't remember exactly. So thank you for correcting me.
It doesn't matter. It's a heck of a situation, as you rightly highlighted there.
Yeah.
And the impact that it's having on Nigerian farming, of course, is catastrophic as well. I suppose that the whole issue that we as a council are looking at is with regard, well, the major thing that we were concerned about was climate change. And I suppose the concern that there were 2 climate change bills sitting at Stormont. Hopefully, and fingers crossed, we'll eventually get something sorted out there, that there will be a bill going through, as I think we're the only part of the British Isles that doesn't have a climate change bill, but hopefully Stormont will sort that out. And there are differentials in the 2 bills, the one from the Department for Agriculture Department and the one from the Green Party. And I suppose the target, the 2050 target, and I'm delighted with the news that you have given there, that the beef sector, and in fact the meat sector in general, I'm in a pretty heavy sheep area here as well. That it's been proved that they are not the bad guys in this, and that there are means whereby mitigation will help the farming industry, because I think those fears that were there, that were being expressed at the numbers of the reduction in numbers that would be necessary to meet targets, and I think what you're telling us is actually no, we can resolve that, and that is a concern. So I suppose that issue of liaison with the Ulster Farmers Union. And by the way, what's the size of your organisation? How many members have you got in Northern Ireland? And I appreciate what you're saying about the big machinery. I suppose on the other side of that, big machinery requires fuel. Are there sufficient moves being made for the electrification of that machinery? And I realise the torque levels, etc., need to be taken into consideration. So can that be dealt with? Thank you, Chair, and thank you, William.
Yeah, good questions, Mr. Hussey. Thank you very much for those. Am I okay, Mr. Chair, to go ahead and answer?
Yeah, David, it's up to yourself if you'd rather answer individually or maybe take a group.
Yeah, no, I think I'll go ahead just and answer individually if that's okay, and I'll try and be quick.
Go ahead.
Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Right. Councillor Hussey, to answer your question on the UFU, when David Hanley and others set up Farmers for Action, they basically said that was the main aim of Farmers for Action, is to deal with farm gate prices. And in short, if the National Farmers Union, the Ulster Farmers Union, the National Farmers Union in Wales and National Farmers Union in Scotland had been doing their job, David Hanley always said Farmers for Action wouldn't have been necessary. Now, to bring that forward, we don't fight with the NFU or UFU. We don't argue with them. We do not fall out with them. Make no mistake about it. And we meet them at different stakeholder events and other times. But it's important, first of all, to remember how close they are to government in England. And secondly, it's important now to note that the UFU in Northern Ireland now have corporate membership. And they also have, in their scheme, they claim they have 11,000 something members, but included in that is free membership for everyone attending agricultural training or college of some sort, and that includes ag students at Queen's. And then they have rural dwellers who are members who are not necessarily farmers. So, I think they need to be careful that they're not trying to ride 2 horses at the one time. And maybe when you hear my comments later, I'm not going to say any more than that. That information is there online with their website that you can read it. what membership involves and what they have as membership. And on the Farmers for Action front, just I'll deal with the membership question that they asked when we're on that subject. And by the way, the Ulster Farmers Union, their local offices do a lot of good work, as they do themselves. Obviously, there are things that we get disappointed by, such as our legislation bill has been sent to them, and to date we have not had a response, and they have seen sight of it now, I would say probably about 12 months ago, just when it was ready to go forward, you know, to Stormont in some form. So, you know, that sort of, we think, is not fair to their members. However, obviously our organisation and others in Northern Ireland, we do our bit to make sure that people are aware of the bill anyway, and have been doing so for quite a number of years while this has been going on. The bill would have been ready to go forward in 2016, only Stormont went down, and since then we modified it to suit the climate change requirement. So in a way, things have a way of working out, and I'm sure the UFU will come round to see that. Now, the number of membership that Farmers for Action have is something like 6,000 across the UK. Now, I'm sorry, I can't give you a breakdown of how many we have in Northern Ireland, but we tend to put it in such a way that we have an awful lot of supporters as well as members. And we must also point out that David Hanley always said, if we're out protesting, as we have been many times over the years, then the membership goes up. And then all of a sudden, when the protesting subsides and they think Farmers for Action's not doing anything, then the membership goes down. But the UFU, reading between the lines, have the same problem. They are struggling to keep membership. And this all comes back to the fact that farmers are short of income. I know that sounds small, you think, for all the membership it would take to be a member of the UFU or Farmers for Action, but it is a factor. If you find yourself in a situation with a pile of bank loans and other things, and you have to choose between paying your UFU membership or Farmers for Action membership or feed your family, you know, you can guess which one comes first. So to move on, you explained and mentioned that the council is looking at the two climate change bills, understandably. Now, we backed the climate coalition bill that Claire Bailey took forward, and we backed it simply because this is Farmers for Action, backed it simply because of its sense of urgency. And we obviously can pick out a lot of mistruths that are coming across in the climate change story across the world, but one person and the scientists that back him up that really concerns us is Sir David Attenborough, and he is stating that if we don't halt accelerated climate change within 5 to 10 years, then we are past the point of no return. And indeed, as you've pointed out, Councillor Hussey, maybe if it was the same programme, I'm not sure that it was an ITV one recently, that there is evidence now from the polls that climate change is moving perhaps even quicker than anybody has anticipated, and that was just in the last couple of days, that it now rains in Greenland, actually, which it never did before. It always snowed, and the rate the glaciers the ice cap is melting, etc. So that is our reason for backing the first climate change bill, and we appreciate Edwin Poots has brought his one forward, and the debate between the two bills is, one is saying 2045 to get down to net zero, the other one is saying 2050. Well, to us, that is irrelevant. The immediate thing is to deal with the next 5 to 10 years. And if that's dealt with, then you can pace yourself after that, once you get it arrested. So I'm sure, like yourself, these two bills will probably come together and we might finish up meeting in the middle, which is maybe never a bad place to be. But from our point of view, we can't stress the urgency of climate change enough, and what it means to everyone's food supply, and what it means to family farmers and their work on the ground trying to battle against unseasonal weather, perhaps from here on. So that brings us to the big machinery and the use of fossil fuels. Now, my day job is farm machinery sales and service and inventions. as well. So to answer your question, we can confirm that we have sight of electric tractors coming through, which tend to be the smaller horsepower end. And then also already built and working is tractors that run on methane. And we're also looking into the possibility that there may be a way of capturing methane when animals are housed. So I don't need to tell you where that's all leading, and that's not to mention another method of livestock producing electricity, which is also been proven to work and is now heading towards a working farm model to see how that delivers. So, you know, I'm pleased to say at the farming end, you know, we would like to think that in 5 to 10 years that we could eliminate the use of a lot of fossil fuel on the farm, and we'd really be going places if we can pull that off. But again, I repeat, the Northern Ireland Farm Welfare Bill needs to go through. And I mean, they'll not currently, our organisations under Northern Ireland farm groups heading, and it's backed by National Beef Association, it's backed by Farmers for Action, it's backed by the Northern Ireland Livestock Auctioneers Association, it's backed by Northern Ireland Agricultural Producers Association, and it's backed by Belfast Hills Farmers. So we currently have received from the Agriculture Committee at Stormont 3 legal questions to be answered. So our legal representatives are currently working on that to get that back to them. And the pressure that's in Stormont at the minute, this bill will certainly not, I would think, go forward between now and next May's elections. However, we would feel quite sure that it will go forward after that. And then obviously all the help everybody can get behind it to support it will be appreciated, and what it will mean to Northern Ireland at the end of the day. Because currently, when you think about it, these big corporate retailers, and between people going in to buy groceries, etc., with their cards and with their cash, etc., this money all whizzes off to London or Dublin, and Northern Ireland has left the poor relation in that respect. And I mean, I think the grocery market some years back was quoted at 10 billion, and I'm sure it's got higher since that. It's probably between 10 and 11, I should think, at this time. So that, compared to the income that family farmers across Northern Ireland receive, there's an awful lot of space between the two. So I hope I have perhaps answered everything, Councillor Hussey, and happy to take the next question.
Thank you for that, William. Our next councillor is Councillor O'Neill, and my apologies, Councillor O'Neill. I didn't see you in the chat box there earlier. Go ahead.
Don't be worrying. Thank you, William. It was really great to have you in to present to council, because as Councillor Hussey had said, we did have the Ulster Farmers Union presenting to our committee before, and I think it's really important to hear the diversity of voices among the farming community, because I know that there is a real diversity, and I was really impressed by your organisation and the demands that you have, and the fact that these are Farmers for Action. These are looking for future proof solutions to farming, and I think that's really important to be really looking at the future of agriculture in the lens of a climate crisis that we're facing. And I thought it was great that you acknowledged that you have been feeling the impacts of climate change from the 1980s, and with the variations in our climate and extreme weather conditions, and that is only going to get worse, and it's going to get more frequent, and and it's farmers who feel the cold face of that. And I think, like, if COVID-19 has showed us anything, it is that, like, one of the things that has shown us is the importance of food sovereignty. Where we really started to think of, like, where do we get our food from? How are we so dependent? How can we make that dependency sustainable and safe as well? And the food that we eat is so important, which means the food that we produce is so important, and the welfare of our farmers who produce our food is so important. And I think our council should really support the Northern Ireland Farm Welfare Bill. And I think I'll propose that we write a letter in support of the Northern Ireland Farm Welfare Bill, or or find, or even get more information about it as well. And I think, it was really striking to hear that, there's farmers who are living in poverty. You had said, from a report in 2013, 25% of farming families are living below the poverty line. And I would definitely say that has gotten worse. And as you said, that, farmers are subsidizing the cost of our food by working part-time as well. And, I have farming family myself, who the husband and wife both do work as well as running a farm. And I think that the massive profits that corporations are making is absolutely, shocking. And like, I just was looking it up there. Tesco's annual profits last year were like £825 million. And that was actually a reduction in profits, which is just astronomical. And all farmers are looking for is a fair and decent living wage. And as you said, that enables farmers, rather than just scraping by year after year and having to respond to whatever climate crisis they're faced with, it actually enables farmers to invest in and future-proof their farms. Because unfortunately, farming agricultural strategy in the north, the last policy was going for growth, which was focused on increasing the number of big industrial, large scale farms at the expense of the smaller farmer. And I don't know if you know how many small farms that we have in the north here, because again, I'm aware that like a lot of membership in the Ulster Farmers Union, or a lot of the power in the Ulster Farmers Union, are those bigger, large scale intensive agricultural farms. And it's those farms that are actually the ones who are contributing most to the climate crisis. And they're, in a way, it's important to hear those other voices of the small family farmer, because that's probably the majority of farms, but it's probably the voice that's least heard. I think like but we need to start thinking differently, and I think it's good that you have an open relationship with the Ulster Farmers Union. But like it's really, really important to think about future-proofing farming, and we need to move beyond business as usual. The attachment to industrial agriculture for massive profits for those corporations with the processing companies, the corporate wholesalers, and the corporate retailers. And we really do need a step change in farming. And I think more power to you and your organisation, William. And it'd be great to hear from more local farmers and hear their ideas for solutions to the climate crisis and the impact that is going to have on our food sovereignty and on on farming and the north here. So I will email just the proposal to write a letter in support of the Northern Ireland Farm Welfare Bill. I'll email that there to Jill. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. We'll need a seconder for that. If Councillor Dobbins indicated in the chat that she's content to second it. Go ahead there, William.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor O'Neill. I would like to think that in Farmers for Action we do our best. Our steering committee are made up of family farmers, and we do try to listen to other organisations as well, like Friends of the Earth, Green Party, everybody. We have discovered we shouldn't be treating these people as not farming friendly. In actual fact, we've taken the time to talk to everyone and to find out that we're all trying to go the same route to find the ideal situation that leaves us with a countryside like what it looks like today, that it doesn't get into a position where farmers can't afford to keep the countryside in the condition it's in, and that we don't find ourselves in the positions someday of Sainsbury's deciding to build a corporate farm, as things like that have happened in America and indications of it happening in England. So our bill actually, if enacted, would create balance in the countryside, and there would be more diversity of crops, which would be a good thing, which actually would stop this need for the ever more efficient retailers pushing down the line and automatically driving family farmers out of business, and then they leave themselves in a position where they've no option but build the corporate farm. So shall we say our bill, we would hope, is a stitch in time and only just. So from here on, it needs to make progress, and we thank you very much for your email of support sent forward, and to the fact that it's been seconded. So we appreciate that and appreciate the support.
Thank you for that, William. Our next indicated speaker is Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. William,
Mr. Kerrigan, could I just say something before I forget there to the Chair? If you can send me a wee email request for those that wish to see it, we will send you a copy of the Gosling report and of the bill, which obviously Councillor O'Neill would like to see, and others. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No problem.
No, that's all right. That's all right, William. William, I'm raising an issue here in regards to this. You've made reference here in the Farmers for Action group there, and in regards to support for the climate bill, and in regards to the I know you've supported that, and I see where you're coming from. And in regards to the farm gate prices, I don't think anyone in the farming sector could argue with you in relation to that. You know, that's for a long time. It's been, as the man says, when you see that beast ready in the yard, and when that goes, and you're maybe getting 13, 14, maybe £1,500 for that animal, and when you would go to try to buy that animal back from the butcher shop, you could be spending 2.5 times that. So again, someone's making a cleaning out of it there, and it's not the man that is producing it, and that's been the way it has been for a long time. And again, I commend the work on that. And I have no issue in that regard there. And again, it has been the case that maybe the factories or the large supermarkets and that someone's making money, and it's not been the farm producer. It's not been the producer, the farmer. Now, there is the issue though, in regards to, we've seen the report, we've had the Farmers Union and the Ulster Farmers Union, and we've seen reports there in regards to the stock. And again, they're on about the methane production and that. And ultimately, I know there was an attack or a push here in regards to intensive farming. But the intensive farming surely is in relation to the large pig units, large hen units. And they're not producing the methane in the same, whereby the animals chowing the cud, the cows, the sheep. And there were still, the last I had seen, admittedly I'm away today, the last I had seen was that it was an 85% reduction in livestock, cattle and sheep, to try to meet the target by 2045. Now, I know what you're saying about a fair price for the ordinary family farm. But if I go to a man there with and to be fair, the average farm milk herd there is in excess of 100 cows, and even say the 100 cows for handy counting. And a reduction by 85%, 15 cows, there's not a hope and blazes that you're going to make a profit on that. I would have an accountancy background. I'm dealing with family farms there and have been for this last, 18, 19 years. And I see what they're making. The vast majority of farms there couldn't survive without the sub. And that's the bottom line of it. Couldn't survive without the sub. When you would factor in the hours that would work, every farmer in the country is well below minimum wage. There would be very, very few farms would be able to make a profit without the subsidy that they're in receipt of. Now, the issue is there, if you're taking, and they've had to increase stock figures, they've had to increase stock to get a wee margin on having so many cattle, so many sheep, whatever else. Now, if that climate bill comes in as it stands, and I know even the 2050 target that was suggested there that Minister Poots and the Farmers Union were working on, it's in relation to, in regards to that target, there's still going to be a hit. You're still going to have to reduce stock, but it's just the case of, the bill as it is from Claire Bailey, and the outcome of that will mean that there'll be a lot less cattle, there'll be a lot less sheep. And you have mentioned, as well as that, William, you've mentioned your work with tractors and that, and agricultural machinery. Well, those wee family farms, much as these potentially wee electric tractors, you couldn't buy a tractor nowadays. There's no only an agricultural contractor, and even that would have bothered buying that big machinery. The price of it's unreal. You know, any of them wee farmers, you know, their second-hand tractors there that you could have picked up for 10,000 a couple of years ago, you couldn't touch it now for 16, 17, 18,000 now. You know, the price of that. Them newer machines there, they could be 50, 60, 70, 80,000. You know, they're going to the other extreme. So again, the profitability is not going to be there. And if if the climate bill comes through and we do have to take such a severe hit on the stock figures, it's not going to be justifiable you having a brand new tractor sitting in the street if you're down to 15 cows. You know, it doesn't make sense. Now, I'm sorry, William, here, I'm giving a wee bit of a touch, but there's a wee of things in my head, and I'd rather give them all to you and then let you respond. That's one factor there. Again, I'm not going in massively to the issue about numbers, about membership and all the rest. I know you can't give an exact membership as to your figures there. You're saying about 6,000 across the UK, sorry, and I think the Farmers Union is approximately 76,000 between England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. But as I say, that's what it is. And again, everybody has supporters. You know, again, the vast majority of the wee farmers that I've been dealing with are a member of no organisation. You know, but again, that's it. So as to say, I fully commend the work in regards to supporting the local farms and the wee local producers. No problem that way. But I have a big fear with that. The climate bill and the massive reduction in stock that has to take place as a result of it. Now, further to that, there's the larger machinery. A lot of them wee back farms, you know, outside Castledare where I am at, you know, there's a lot of these wee small farms, wee small fields and all the rest. It's not that handy bringing in the big machinery. Yeah, you know, but the other factor is there, and again, I see it myself, is you're in relation to people that are working. You know, a lot of the family farms now, a family farm could not sustain a family anymore. You know, I spoke to a fella there, and he had said that his father was able to rear him and 3 brothers and sisters with a milk, and the wife didn't work. She worked on the farm with the father, and 50 milk cows, and that reared them grand. He says, I'm milking 120 cows, and he says, I have to have my wife out working full time. He says, and we're just taking over. You know, now the gist of it is, a lot of these people that are in the agricultural sector, farming, maybe with a lot of sheep, lot of cattle, whatever it happens to be, they have another part-time job, as you have mentioned. But the difficulty that I see is, if we have that part-time job, as that man is out wiring, that man is out paring cows' feet, that man is out there on a digger doing the rains, and if you cut the stock, which then there's no cows to pare feet anymore, so he's lost his job because you've cut the stock from you know, by 85% or however big it is. You've if the stock's not there, well, that man doesn't need to be wiring as much because the kettle's not again that wire damaging it. That wire, instead of lasting 15 years, that wire is going to last 25 years because there's no kettle in the fields. That field's only cut for grass now. So you know it's a knock-on effect. The farmer was never a miser, in my opinion. The farmer never held money. If the farmer got a wee pound, it was spent. Should it be on buying a wee bit of ground, or putting up a shade, or buying a bit of machinery, or drainage work, this, that, or the other, he always spent a wee pound. Should it be the machinery dealer? Always got a wee pound. But if there's no stock there, this is my difficulty. And my last point, William, and thanks for listening, is our food production. The food production, everything is traced. Every single thing is traced here. You know, if we tick every single box and dot every I and cross every T here, you know, and we do all we can to do with climate change, and we do go down the line of this 2045 and all the rest, well, I have not make one blind bit of difference. If Brazil is still burning everything and all, it's burning down trees like there's going to be no end of it, and if they're burning away in parts of Africa and this, that, the amount of CO2 and the damage that's been done there. And my difficulty is, as well as this, is that we produce a good quality food product. The market for meat is still there. We're not going to turn into a vegan country. It's not going to happen. Now, and the gist of it is if we're not able to produce, and again, we were plainly told the last time, if the stock are reduced to such an extent, we will not have the liquid milk capacity to meet our own needs. That means there's no more yogurt, there's no more cheese, none of that is produced in Northern Ireland anymore, because we'll not have the figures, we'll not have the milk production to do it. Now, the situation I see is then, we're going to be importing this Brazilian beef, and then Brazil's going to need more ground for it. So we're in a catch-22 there. We're doing everything right on our side, and we're just pushing the problem to a third world country. And that's where I would be more minded. We should keep our stock levels, keep our production, and stop the importing of this other, from other countries there, and stop the demand on them, because we have a line with we have such a trace and such red tape and such such legislation with our own food production that our side would be a lot, it would be a lot better just keeping that as it is, rather than us reducing our own level and just bringing it, importing it from somewhere else. Now, that's my own thoughts. I don't really. There was questions on it somewhere, William. I don't know where you'll get them, but there was questions on it somewhere. So I'll leave it with you, William. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for your concerns, and I will endeavour to answer them for you. Number one, Farmers for Action backed the climate change bill at that time because there was no other one on offer, was number one. Two, it had a sense of urgency. And three, at that point, we had enough information to see and be able to be sure. And as I say, myself from an invention side, as well as all my contacts across Europe with machinery companies and people that we have connections with. And also, there's not many roads and lanes across Northern Ireland that I haven't been up and down over the years since 1973. So I know the small farmers and the larger ones that you're talking about. But to answer your question, we went ahead to support that climate change bill, knowing Claire Bailey like we do, and how forthright and straightforward she was, and her PA, her SPAD rather, who is a farmer's daughter from County Meath. Now, our support went as follows, that not one person would have to keep one animal less, because we can see enough modifications, inventions and changes coming in the next 5 to 10 years to allow that to happen. As I described earlier, the methane solutions are already becoming apparent and being worked on as we speak. The ability to get rid of the use of fossil fuel, but more so on the cattle front. Our aim is for all the things that we have access to at the minute, the new ideas that are coming forward, etc., that another 5 years, never mind 10, will make an awful difference, so that you and I can have this conversation then, and I hope you will be able to tell me that FFA were right. Not one animal less will anybody have to keep, because we've found the solutions. Now, Claire Bailey was good enough to put the case along the way, from what she could see of the bill, remembering that it was the coalition that was behind her. And I don't know whether you've read that coalition list or not, but mind you, there's some amazing organisations in there that support it. So, I mean, if there's a solution found, then there is no issue about having to reduce stock numbers. And, we would be afraid that Minister Putz's aims are, sort of with the corporates in mind, who are trying to keep business as usual and trying to ensure going forward that they're not going to be short of supply, and that kind of the gravy train, I hate to say it, the gravy train carries on, but we don't take that view. So in other words, to answer your question, we're on the same page. There'll be nobody asked to keep any less cattle while we're around. And we intend to make sure of it and make sure that all the innovation comes forward to see to that in time, which we are convinced it will. And number two, you're quite right. We can't let anything happen to that, because they would be trying to import food around the world, which already is an issue for us that they can't justify. You cannot be seen to be carrying beef from Brazil to Northern Ireland, or even bill from Australia to Northern Ireland, because we're 80% export. And that export should always go to your nearest neighbours. It's what we call the Isle of Man principle. That, for example, the UK is short of dairy and beef, and that quite rightly should come from Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland as nearest neighbours. We're not saying that if somebody's starving on the other side of the world that beef can't be shipped to them if it cannot be sourced anywhere closer. But we're in this climate change emergency, and we would like to see governments held to account, as our welfare bill does, the climate change part of it, that you have to justify bringing food from the other side of the world before you can just go and import it as a corporate to make money, because we've found over the years, even with respect to the Brazilian farmers back in 2007 and 8, it wasn't the Brazilian farmers that were making money out of this importing of Brazilian beef. It was the corporates at both ends and the shipping companies in between, and the big corporations that were and still are slashing down the rainforest. But you're saying if we don't do anything about, even we were to do everything to the letter in Northern Ireland, it won't make a blind bit of difference. Well, I'll tell you, there's one more step that everybody can take, and that is, now I mean this against the Chinese totalitarian government, not the Chinese people, because they have nearly lost any ability to have a democracy. The message is dead simple. Stop buying Chinese products and Chinese products that appear in your next new car or whatever. If you go to buy another car and you're going down the electric route or whatever else, you say, is there anything from China in this? Because if there is, I don't want to know. Now, that's one way that we can make a difference around the world. To go back, you're absolutely right. Production in Northern Ireland is very strictly controlled on the farms, and we deliver to some of the highest standards in the world. And, that seems to be what people want, and we're happy to deliver it. And surely it goes back to our point that, you're saying a man with 120 cows now still needs his missus working off farm or alternative income. I mean, this is a ridiculous situation. So our legislation bill, and I have seen this 100 times over the years, this tightening of off-farm income having to come in to keep the farm going, along with the subsidy money. So, we used to get a lot of flack from the general public on subsidies. And thankfully, now that they understand more what's going on farms, this is not as loud and as critical as it used to be. Now people are glad of their farmers to try and keep them fed, especially through COVID-19 and other things. But I used to say, well, which subsidy do you mean? Do you mean the one that come from Brussels and Westminster? Or do you mean the farmer's wife who's needed at home and is out working? Or do you mean the farmer himself who's out working, maybe part-time or full-time? Or do you mean his family who are helping along the way, and the senior citizens who are long past retirement age who are still helping out off the strength of their pension? Or do you mean the building sites they sold to try and keep going? Which subsidy do you mean? So roughly translated, I think everybody already knows it anyway, the size of Hoover, we'll call it, that these big corporations are actually using in Northern Ireland. They'll soon have everybody in the farming community standing with nothing except their underpants. Forgive me for putting it that way. So thus our Farm Welfare Bill seeks to address a lot of your concerns, Alderman Kerrigan. And I hope I've answered all your questions. If there's anything I haven't, you mentioned the UFU in there and their concern about the climate change bill. Do remember what I said about the corporate membership, and are you sure that the UFU are speaking for their family farm members and not their corporate members? We've got to watch this now, because it's time for a reality check across the board here. And we need to get the whole thing grounded. And by the way, on the difference between a big farmer and a small farmer, I lost a good friend in Family Farmers Association, their FFA also, Family Farmers Association in England. He died a couple of years ago, but big fella, 6'2", and he had a beard like Grizzly Adams. And he was telling me this joke one day that some lady asked him, Michael, I understand you're a small farmer. And he straightened himself up, and this massive big man with the beard, and he looked down at her and he says, I don't know. He says, have a look at me. What do you think? So that was one side of it. And then he says, you have the other side of it, 30,000 hectares of eucalyptus trees in Brazil. So again, we make the point that Farmers for Action is here to represent all farmers across Northern Ireland. Whatever size they be, they are valuable, and we need to keep them on the land. Thank you. I hope I answered you.
Thank you, William. Our next indicated speaker now is Councillor Jackson.
Okay, good Chair, and I'm not going to be as qualified to speak on farmer matters as some of the others on the committee, but I do want to take the opportunity on behalf of Sinn Féin to welcome yourself, William, and commend the work that Farmers for Action have done in supporting for small farmers, because what we all need to recognise is that there's a massive role for family farms. Family farms are an integral part of our economy, but they're an integral part of the system in providing food right across this island, so and beyond, as you've alluded to. And one of the things, I know there's been discussion during this committee around diverse opinions and almost conflicting opinions. I've listened to the presentation and the discussion today, and I've also listened to the discussion from the Ulster Farmers Union. And to me, there seems to be a common purpose. There's an acceptance that climate change is here. Climate change is having a dramatic impact on those who rely on the land to earn a living. And that's something that, that from what I'm hearing from yourselves and from the Ulster Farmers Union, is that there's a sense of urgency that action needs to be taken to try and reduce our carbon footprint. And I think we're all in agreement with this, and I don't believe that there is any bad guys in terms of the small farming community. There's people that are going out working the land and to provide for us all, provide for our communities. And we have seen over the past 2 years in particular how we've the large corporate retailers have done incredibly well, and at the same time we're hearing how the local farmers, the local farming community is struggling. And this, so what is highlighted throughout all of this is that there's a need for urgent action in terms of mitigating against the impacts of climate change and how our actions are impacting in climate change. And I'm hearing that across the board, regardless from which organisation is presenting. And what was interesting to hear from yourself, William, is the role of innovation, and that there's how farmers are in a unique position where by changing practices, they can drastically reduce emissions, and that's something that needs to be explored. And it's exciting going forward. It's exciting for farmers, and we have to realise while farmers are at the front line in terms of climate change, but they're also best positioned to make those changing practices to reduce the impacts of our carbon emissions. But what's very clear from listening to everybody is that the model's not sustainable. The current model isn't working, and there needs to be some rebalance. And hopefully the bill that's coming through the Farm Welfare Bill will help in terms of that rebalance. And we would support the proposal that's been put in front of us today. But one of the things that wasn't touched on, it was alluded to briefly, is in terms of Brexit and the challenges that Brexit may pose to local farmers, small farmers in particular, small farmers who have become reliant on the support that we've received from Brussels, that farmers have benefited from the support from Brussels. And I know, William, you alluded to the success of the Farmers for Action in terms of the Brazilian beef and preventing our market being flooded with Brazilian beef. Is there any danger in terms of if there's any the protections that have been secured through the protocol? Is there any fears that that Brazilian beef, those successes that have been one in the past, could that work be undone as a result of Brexit? And again, just because one of the things that we need to accept and acknowledge is that the role for the local farmers within our communities is vital going forward. When we're talking about reducing our carbon footprint, it doesn't make sense for us to be flying our food, meat from the other side of the world. As you said, the market, the closest market is suppose the most sustainable market, and that's the model that we need to be looking forward. We just need it to be done in a more balanced and more fair way. But again, I just want to thank you for the presentation, and it sparked a lot of very interesting discussion. So I just want to thank you again for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I don't see a question, or didn't hear a question there at all.
There was one wee question, Mr. Chair, maybe if I could address for Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll be brief. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great.
He mentioned the EU and CAP money support and link it all to the protocol and the situation that farmers find themselves in at the minute. Just to point out to you, Councillor Jackson, that the Northern Ireland Farm Welfare Bill can accommodate it can accommodate fluctuation on farm support, because it's geared to do that. By the way it works, it will be, if enacted, it would be adjusted annually for inflation and deflation. Therefore, obviously for the independent consultants that do the analysis of what it costs to grow potatoes, that do the analysis of what it costs to grow wheat, barley, to produce milk, to produce beef, etc., then they would actually be factoring in the subsidy support. So as it wanes, the Farm Welfare Bill will take up the slack, so that again, at the end of the day, farmers are receiving a minimum of the cost of production, inflation linked, plus a margin for their produce. So I hope that maybe answers that side of the story. And as to, you know, carrying coal to Newcastle, in other words, bringing beef to Northern Ireland from Brazil, for example, then that's a big debate that Farmers for Action is in the middle of, along with Fairness for Farmers in Europe members across these islands. And it is our intention, you know, to target the UK government in a way with this that will resonate with them, that they are going to be held to account if they are going to go around the world and do trade deals that just open floodgates for stuff to, you know, to come in from anywhere. Now, they can't preach that they want to be part of the Paris climate change, you know, agreement, and then have the big event in Glasgow coming up very shortly, and think that you do that and then you just carry on business as usual. Sorry, there's going to be a lot of people and a lot of pressure that are going to say, sorry, you're not going to do that. You need to implement the Isle of Man, system, which says that you buy, if your country is short of any food product, and you buy from your nearest neighbour. Now that may mean, as in the case of GB buying from Southern Ireland or Northern Ireland beef, but in some other case, maybe it's some item that has to come from the other side of the world, and it's a necessity item. Then, you know, obviously that then constitutes your nearest neighbour. But let's be sure, ourselves and other organisations are going to make sure that there will be no cheating on climate change, and that it can't be all sorted out on paper for these corporates under no circumstances. We're going to hold them to account. So we'll be glad of Sinn Féin's backing and every other party when it comes to that part. Thank you.
Thank you, William. And our final indicated councillor is Councillor Ferguson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, William, for your presentation today. It's been really refreshing hearing a different aspect and a different view, especially when it comes to farming and climate change. And I suppose too, it's great to hear that there are moves towards electric tractors and using methane in the production. I wanted to kind of touch, coming from a highly deprived area, and obviously food poverty is a huge thing. And I know you touched a bit on it about prices not being put back on to the consumer. I just wanted to find out what you have kind of reaction-wise from the big corporations, because we have seen in times before the pandemic where the slightest movement in margins, and all of a sudden we've got job losses and big stores not being opened and bakeries being closed down, and kind of what kind of legislation and within the welfare bill have you put in to kind of make sure that that price doesn't be put back on to the consumer, or even at the result of maybe job losses?
Well, let me answer you, Councillor Ferguson. And the first thing I would say is that the supermarkets, the large corporate food retailers, etc., by this time they'll be aware of our bill. Now, they have to be careful how they react to this. Behind the scenes, they will be doing their best to make sure that it never sees the light of day, which means that in Northern Ireland, it has a chance of succeeding. If this bill was presented at Westminster, there would be enough corporate manoeuvres going on behind the scenes that it never would see the light of day. So that's number one, I would say. And the second thing is, if Tesco, Sainsbury's or other come out and criticise this bill, they are actually saying, we do not want family farmers to get properly paid for their produce. So, that's the first thing I would say. Now, the second thing is, according to the Gosling report, and we had figured this out also, then, first of all, the idea is that this forces the corporates to lower their profits, which means a lot more money is kept in Northern Ireland. And as a result of that, it will create 10 to 20,000 jobs. Now, there's 24,500 family farmers in Northern Ireland, approximately. And you could count virtually a job on each of those farms to start with, but it's not that simple. I'm putting it in simple terms here. I'll give you an example. You could have a paramedic in the city of Derry who has suddenly discovered that his farm that he has rented out at home, or maybe farms part-time, is now viable. And he'd say, right, I've done enough of being a paramedic, so I'm going home to farm. So there'll be a musical chairs of employment because of the reversal of taking 57% part-time farmers, perhaps reversing a big chunk of that to full-time farmers. And on top of that, a lot of other maybe larger farms have need of employing people. And if they had the surplus money, make no mistake about it, as the earlier councillor alluded to there, the number of hours that farmers work, they're really, Councillor Kerrigan mentioned it several times, farmers are really working 24/7 to try and stand still and keep their families. And I mean, that the more that they get on this treadmill of being told to keep more and more stock and get more efficient and do all those things, and nobody mentions them getting properly paid. So this is now coming to an abrupt wall where the farmer can't do any more hours, and we have all the mental issues that are starting to follow this now, the farmers that can't get their bills paid, etc. So the bottom line is, as somebody, I think it was the previous councillor pointed out, we're ready for a step change in agriculture. We've been doing this other for the last X number of decades. Now it's time for change, and COVID-19 has forced this, climate change has forced it, and years of farmers trying to supply food under the cost of production. All of this has come to a head, and this is where we're at. And to answer your question about the deprived areas, the fact that there's more money going to be kept in Northern Ireland is good news for a start, and perhaps a lot of those people can get jobs. But in addition, other than normal inflationary increases, this bill will not cause an increase in the cost of food, because remember, after the Second World War, when everybody had to, as it were, dig for Britain, and farmers had to plough up ground and produce as much food as they possibly could, it was stated after the Second World War that people across the UK were as healthy at that point in history as they have ever been. And what were they doing? Eating good basic food. So at the end of the day, the important people, Councillor Ferguson, that you represent, and you're calling them in a deprived area, but in all areas across Northern Ireland, from the family farmers' point of view, those people are our customers, and they're welcome at any time to buy direct from the farm or from the farm shops or from their local greengrocers. Buy all the good basic food, and even that is if these corporate food retailers, even after the bill were enacted, attempted to put prices up. If they did, that alternative is very much there, you know, for them as well. But it won't happen because Tesco will have to, you know, continuously watch the price that Asda's selling at. Will have to watch the price that Lidl is selling at. They watch each other like a hawk. And even when the bill's enacted, we will have no control over what they're charging. But the one thing we will have control over is the price on the farm, which is affordable to anyone who wants to buy from it. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, William. I don't hear any comeback from Councillor Ferguson there, so I take it she's satisfied with that answer. William, that was our final councillor. So just remains for me as chair of the Environment Committee to again thank you for coming in and presenting to the committee today. Certainly some stark facts and figures there presented, and some heartening news as well in terms of what the farmers could be doing, or indeed are doing, to address climate change. You had mentioned earlier there just about circulating that report. So if you could send that on to Karen Phillips at the council, who's the head of environment, she will then circulate that to councillors. And regards the proposal there by Councillor O'Neill, members, I haven't seen anybody with any concern or anybody in opposition to it, so I take it that we're unanimous support of it, and that will then go forward to full council, where I expect it will be ratified. So thanks again, William, and safe home.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, members, that brings us to our next item, which is Chair's business. Just a couple of notifications that maybe I should have addressed earlier, but if you look there, the confidential minutes is at item 32. Obviously, we'll be taking that as the first item in confidential information. Also, members, I'm advised that the cut-off time for a committee meeting is now 8 o'clock. So I would advise members to, or would ask members maybe to keep their comments brief, and if you have a question to any of the officers, then ask it, please. A couple of members indicated for items under Chair's business, and again, I would ask them to be as brief as possible. So before I go to that, just as chair of the committee, I have one item of Chair's business, and I suppose maybe this isn't the most relevant committee, but as a Tyrone man, I just want to obviously put on record congratulations to Tyrone on their winning of the Sam Maguire Cup, the All Ireland, at the weekend. Heartiest of congratulations go to the management and indeed all the players. And I note as well the mayor, to his credit, wished the Tyrone team the very best of luck, which is good to see. Members, I have Alderman Ramsey first, and then I have Councillor Tierney under Chair's business. Thank you. So go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be as quick as possible. It's basically, I'm just fulfilling a promise to people, and Connor's aware of it, the Peace Bridge issue again with dogfighting. I've been asked to raise it and basically to get some feedback on where we are with it. Now, I've since found out that the cameras are actually working and they're being controlled by City Centre Initiative, so that's positive. We are aware the possibility that it is actually the same person and dog that are guilty of this. So really all I need assurances of today and advice, or sorry, information, is where we are with the situation. I know the bridge is checked twice a day. Are we going to have to end up having like more checks during the day? And are we any closer through the cameras? Because I know I've talked to the people who are responsible for CCTV about it. and I think they were going to try and help to see if we can find out who this culprit is, because it's absolutely shocking. And you see, I've actually sent the link to Connor on Facebook. It was going viral. It was crazy. We were obviously as council getting a lot of flack about it, and I'm just wondering if Connor maybe has any more information. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose we have come at it on a couple of different fronts. I've spoken to CCI, and we'll submit a subject access form to get access to the CCTV. They will review it, and if they can identify something, they will if they can, release that to us. In terms of cleansing, I've asked the cleansing teams to again review the operations on the Peace Bridge, and if we need to up it. What I think the issue is the irresponsible owner who's permitting their dog to do it on a frequent basis. And if anyone has any information around that, then we'll take that information and we'll deal with it. But again, it comes back to the irresponsibility of the owner. There are sufficient bins and bags in the area, and that really is the core of the problem. But from an internal process, we'll look at identifying the person, and we'll look at what we can do to improve the cleansing on the bridge.
Thank you very much. And then one quick one I've promised as well is just, are we any further forward in sorting out the pothole issues in the Altney graveyard?
There's a quotation to go out to repair them, and as soon as we get that back, we'll carry out the works.
Thank you very much, Connor. I'll pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. I now ask Councillor Tierney.
Yep, Chair, thank you for allowing me in. The first one is very brief. Just to thank both officers from Derry City and Strabane District Council, Environment Regeneration Department and DFI for their work and getting the Rainbow Crossing down on the Ford embankment. I think it's been greatly received across the city and district and further afield. Has been the topic of many Facebook threads and one thing in an hour. So I think it's doing exactly what it was planned to do at the time. So just thanks to the officers for their work around that, Chair, through you. And the second one, Chair, I've had a number of constituents in the Ballyarnett DA who have reported to me since the rollout of the larger brown bins that is mixed obviously with the green waste and the food waste, that they're seeing an increased level of little small flies in and around their properties. I'm wondering, have those complaints been reported to council? If so, across the district, are there many of them? And what advice can we provide? Because I visited one resident whose bin was actually emptied that day. She had bleached the bin, cleaned it out, started using it again, and maggots were in and around the bottom of the bin. This is seeming to be an ongoing problem, and I just want some information from officers if there's anything we can do to address it, first and foremost, and what advice we should be providing to constituents who are having this worry. And is it something that's happening across the district? Are we aware of that? Thank you.
Chair, I haven't had anything reported to me other than what you're advising of today. From the householder's perspective, we would just encourage good housekeeping, to clean the bin, to make sure that the bins are stored properly, that the lids are closed on them, that we're providing the liners for the caddies that they use those, and if they're fulfilling all of those, then in the main there shouldn't be a problem. But I would say that it's been a particularly hot summer, and now that there's a bit of rain about as well, you will see an increase in larvae and so on. So that's just to be expected at this time of year. But if householders follow good hygiene and good housekeeping with their bins, it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, Councillor Tierney. Councillor O'Neill, you're looking on there.
It was just in regards to the large brown bins as well. Kind of anecdotally, I've noticed just less people putting out their big brown bins in comparison to whenever they had the smaller food caddies. And I'm just wondering, are council capturing, that data, of has there been increased compliance with the food waste directive or reduced compliance, or what has there been a report of general feedback from the public, and will there be a review on this at any stage?
Thanks for that, Chair. Yeah, once we have a full year's data, we can bring that forward, but we are monitoring what's called set-out rates and participation rates, and those have increased. I think there's been a wider take-up of the larger brown bins, and people seem to be using them more frequently and more often. But in terms of the tonnages, we won't have the full year's data until into the spring of next year, but certainly we can bring a report back for members, even in terms of the increase in recycling and composting rates since we've brought the scheme forward.
Ferguson. Apologies, I think it's Councillor Jackson actually. That's next.
Thanks, Chair. And again, it's on the same vein. I know I have been in contact with yourself, Connor, in relation to whenever the changeover from not using the food caddies to the sole use of the larger brown buns. I know there's been certain particular areas of the city that or areas that don't have gardens, or areas that almost don't have the space for the larger 240 litre brown bun. Had requested a smaller 140 litre brown bun. I know I've put on a few requests, and those we've been told that we were waiting for stock to be delivered. Has there been any update on those?
Chair, I don't have the update to hand, but I'll find out. But we have ordered a quantity of smaller 120 litre bins for those circumstances, so that we appreciate that people in some properties have difficulty storing bins, but we're waiting for that delivery to come in. But anyone who needs one will get one.
Councillor Dobbins.
Chair, thank you for your indulgence, but it is with regard to bins. And a sideways step, can I ask the officers with regard to our unadopted roads working group? There is there any progress with regard to this working group and what they're actually working on? It's just there is an area, Barleyfields and Culmore. It's on a very steep hill, and especially on the Monday where the black and the brown comes out, because that road's unadopted, these people are pulling up their bins. Some of them are actually having a very dangerous activity of, while one person's in the boot, the car goes up the hill, the person in the boot is pulling the bins behind the car. I know that there is legislation all behind this, but can I just from the officer hear that the unadopted roads situation within the whole district is maybe progressing at a faster pace than what it seemingly had done in the past?
Chair, the legal position is, and we did take legal advice on this, is that from an insurance perspective, we can't send vehicles over unadopted roads. The Department for Infrastructure are the competent authority in terms of the adoption process, and once they trigger that, so they can give notice to adopt a road with a year's defect period, and we have agreed that once they issue that notice, we then can send vehicles across the road. But in the absence of that notification and intention to adopt from DFI, the legal advice that we have is not to send vehicles over, as there's no insurance cover. Now, these are 32-ton vehicles laden, and you can appreciate that the challenges and dangers that they present. So I fully understand the difficulties that presents for residents, but that doesn't abdicate council's responsibility in terms of insurance and so on. Now, we did put forward a recommendation through the working group in terms of how the developers could address that through putting in place their own private indemnity that would indemnify council and council vehicles, and that still remains the case. So if developers want to initiate that process, and certainly we can discuss it with them, and once we get the written guarantees around that, we can provide collections, but it's simply to do with indemnity at this point in time.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Who's that?
Chair, Councillor Tierney.
No, Councillor Tierney, I'm not letting anybody back in because, I mean, you know, this is why I'm very reluctant to allow people, you know, an unchairperson's business, even, you know, when they haven't contacted me 24 hours in advance, because it then opens a whole other can of worms. We went from maggots and brown bins now to unadopted roads, so I'm not allowing anybody else back in on this. So. Alderman Devaney, final speaker on this subject.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And I just want to be very brief and around the brown bins. And probably it's an update from Connor on brown bins across the rural area, because I've got quite a number of people asking me when the extension will be to their area. And I've one woman who is really anxious about a brown bin in Alder Road in the Strabane area. And I'm just wondering, Connor, could you give me a quick update on the rollout of brown bins across the rural area as it extends?
Chair, yeah, we are continuing to roll out bins on a weekly basis as soon as we can free up capacity and identify properties to go on. If you give me the specifics, I can update you as to when those properties are likely to come on, but it's a continual process. You know, we have added significant properties over the past number of weeks.
Chair, if members want to contact us directly in relation to individual properties, then we can discuss with members accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, members.
Chair.
Who's that?
Councillor Tierney, Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Tierney.
Chair, with respect, and I appreciate that you're chairing this meeting. I did ask could I come in, and you told me no, you weren't letting anybody else in, and then you proceeded to let Alderman Devaney in on the exact same subject.
No,
can I ask, is there any particular reason?
Because he hadn't spoke earlier on it, that's why. You had already spoke on it.
Right, okay.
Okay. Moving on, members, item 7 is matters arising from the minutes of our previous meeting on the 21st of July. Pages 1 to 12. Any matters arising? There's nobody indicating there. Do I need to get a proposer and seconder, even though these go to full council?
Chair, I think just if the committee is happy that no one has any objections to, then I think we're happy to move on.
Okay. Item 9 then, Karen, is requirement of a street name.
Yeah, Chair, I think it's actually item 8. Yeah.
It's sorry, bilingual signage.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll take that. And members, this is to inform members of the outcome of plebiscites in relation to bilingual signage, which is outlined in section 1 of your report. And the details of the plebiscite are detailed in section 3 of the report, members, and we recommend that given the outcome of the plebiscite, that members are asked to approve the erection of bilingual signage at Ardnally, Castlemore Park, Cranley Park, Duncragan Road, Spruce Meadows, St Colm's Well, the Hawthorns and Thornley Gardens, and Knockavoe Crescent, Newton Street, Newton Place, Strabane. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. Members, I don't see anybody indicating we don't actually need a proposer and seconder, as these are only recommendations. So unless anybody's opposed to it, it'll go forward to full council as a recommendation. So that brings us then to our next item, which is item 9, requirement of a street name. And I think Karen's taken this as well.
Yep, Chair, and this is to gain members' consent to name a new access road constructed as part of the A6 dualling scheme. Members, we would recommend the details of that, which results from the dualling of the A6. With a few properties don't have direct access to Glenshane Road, and members' approval is sought for the adoption of the name Burntollet Road for this new street that was created. Thank you, Chair.
Again, members, if we're content, unless somebody has any issue with it, I intend to move on to item 10, which is another requirement of a street name.
Thank you, Chair. And the purpose of this report is to gain consent to name a new development at Letterkenny Road. And members were recommending that that's actually given the name Old City Crescent in line with the policy. Happy to take any questions that members have.
Any member? Nobody indicated, Karen, so I'll take that as unanimous as well. Item 11 then is bus permit consultations.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And the purpose of this report, members, is to seek your delegated authority to respond to DFI on bus permit consultations. And members, you'll be aware that from time to time we receive notifications from DFI seeking comments in respect to amendments sought to bus service permits, for example, to change timetables, etc. And we would normally bring that to members for your information, seeking any comments to enable us to respond to DFI. But members, we've noticed that the comments are often sought within a timescale that doesn't really fit easily with committee schedules, etc. So we are suggesting to streamline the process that officers would suggest when consultations are received. We email these immediately to members and ask for comments that would enable us to respond within the timescales requested. So members, that's really the process we're suggesting. But again, it's down to members, and we'll be happy to take any comments that members have in relation to that.
Thanks again, Karen. So members, if anybody wishes to make a comment on the consultations, please contact either Karen or a member of her staff, unless somebody wants to comment now, which they're perfectly entitled to do so. If not, I propose then we'll move on to item 12, 18 million trees.
Thank you, Chair. And members, this is to provide an update to members on the 18 million trees campaign and to outline how we could contribute towards the target. And again, to seek members' approval in relation to the long list of sites. Members, you'll be aware of an item that was presented. It's actually October 2020, and a slight typo in your report there in relation to the planting of 18 million trees in order to improve levels of tree coverage, contribute to carbon capture. And the Minister has asked Council to identify publicly owned land for the purposes of reforestation as well as other public sector landowners. And again, members, this fits well with our green infrastructure plan, which aims to increase the number of trees planted and woodlands created. And members, it also fits well, as you will know, with our climate adaptation plan. And the plan includes a green infrastructure theme to maximise nature-based solutions such as trees to manage the risk from flooding, heat, poor air quality and species decline. So members, we've listed a long list of potential sites within the pack today, and really what we're suggesting is that they may need some more consideration in terms of compliance with covenants, etc. And also, members, in addition to the report that we have in front of you, should members wish us to undertake further feasibility on any other sites the council own, or any further consultation, members were happy to do so. So again, we're requesting that we approve the long list for further consideration, and then we would bring a subsequent report back in relation to the deliverability of the campaign at our earliest opportunity. And I'm happy to take any comments that members have, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. I have two councillors indicated so far. Councillor Jackson.
Good Chair, and thanks, Karen, for the report. And on the back of the earlier discussion, this is a fantastic initiative, and it's an initiative that we need to see, and we can't allow too much time to pass before we start to take sort of tangible action to offset the impacts of climate change. But that being said, there are, I do have concerns around one of the sites that has been identified, and it's the site and around the top of Hull Park. And the reason behind that is because as council and this committee is all too familiar with, is that we've recently conducted a play strategy that's identified a deficit in play facilities in this particular area. There is a tremendous housing need in this particular area, and also there's ambitions from local community organisations and sporting groups for that type of area. I believe that there's ample land around the greater Top of Hill area where that could and should be utilised as part of this initiative, but I just don't believe that this piece of land would be the most appropriate, and that's so what I'm asking to do is in terms of endorsing the report that's in front of us, with the exception of that piece of land around the Top of Hull Park, and I'm asking council the liaise with local community organisations, local elected representatives. They help form and develop a master plan for the council-owned land in that area, but also they seek out additional land. And I know from speaking to community organisations, they're very keen to liaise and work with the Woodland Trust to try and identify other lands and have some sort of community involvement, because Chair, I was involved in an initiative in this locality, and it wasn't that long ago. It's been within this council term where we planted 2,000 trees, and because there wasn't wide community buy-in, and it wasn't probably wasn't the most appropriate spot, none of those trees have remained. And I think when we're looking at reducing our carbon footprint and taking real action to address the impacts of climate change, we need we can't keep repeating the mistakes that have been made in the past. So I would be keen to find somewhere that's going to work, and that the trees aren't going to be removed or vandalised. And I think that there's real potential within the greater area. They find alternative sites. So I'm proposing that we move forward. And I know, Chair, you're not accepting proposals, but I'm suggesting that in terms of this particular report, the Top of Hull Park is that we seek out alternative sites in the locality rather than the site that's identified within the report, and that I'm happy to work with officers, do whatever I can to help support the community organisations in developing a master plan for the land that's in there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. And Councillor Jackson, just to clarify around not requiring proposals, that's only for the recommendations on the report. Councillors are more than entitled to make proposals during the course of a meeting, as you have done just now. So if you could put that under the chat box maybe and email it as well. And in the meantime, I'll look for a seconder and then move on then to other indicated speakers as well. Oh, have we got a seconder for that?
Chair, can I come on, Councillor Tierney?
Just 1 second. Councillor O'Neill's in front of you, Councillor Tierney.
Can you add me to the list then, Chair? Apologies, I have no access to the chat box here because I'm in the chamber.
Yeah,
so it's difficult to indicate just.
Yeah, you're next in line, Councillor Tierney. Go ahead, Councillor O'Neill.
All right, thank you. So I definitely support this initiative. Obviously, I've worked with council before. I was a councillor in terms of getting big community tree plantings going and things. But you know, I find it very ironic that this is being driven by one of the leading political polluters, Edwin Putz, who is the current minister over the environment. So I think we need to, I think we definitely need to plant trees, but I also think we need to call out the hypocrisy of Minister Putz, who's given so much to the climate crisis in terms of worsening the state of the environment here in the north. Trees are so essential as we address the climate crisis, for air quality and for biodiversity. And I think I think planting new trees is so important, but we also need to value the trees that we have, and compensatory planting shouldn't be considered as a suitable alternative to retaining mature trees when it's solely to facilitate development. And I think that is a recipe for disaster, and I think we really need to protect the current trees that we have. And I do agree with Councillor Jackson in terms of the community engagement and community buy-in, because when we plant trees in the community, they become part of the community. And I think engagement with local communities can see the potentials for where new trees and new members of their community can be. And I think this could be something that is really excellent throughout the council district, and has lots and lots of potentials. And I think there could be a general call out whenever we are putting this into practice as well, because I'm aware of local sports clubs in the city who would love to further protect the air quality of the sports field by planting trees around it. So I know that although that it's not council owned land, I think there would also be interest from sports clubs, and I think in terms of play parks and stuff as well. I think we should look at play parks again, thinking about air quality and young people and children, and everything that trees have to add to that. I would just want to ask the question kind of around what trees are these, where are we getting the trees from, and is there any work being done in the north or even locally in our council district in terms of bringing on trees, like a tree nursery, because I know that for all this drive to plant trees and plant native trees, a lot of those trees are having to be imported because we don't have the structures and the facilities in place to for tree nurseries to meet the demand. So I don't know if you know the answer to that question, but I would be interested. Thanks.
Chair, I can deal with the second part of that question. We are looking at lands in terms of meanwhile use. The lands that we intend to bring forward for other purposes, but we intend to look at meanwhile use. And one of the proposals we're looking at is a tree nursery, just as Councillor O'Neill has mentioned there. So we have a bit of scoping to do around that, but it's certainly something that the team are very keen to do. And in terms of, I suppose, the other part of that, we are, as a council, keen to promote native species trees, broadleaf trees, and the team are again looking at how we can introduce those across the city and district where it's appropriate to do so.
Happy enough, Councillor O'Neill?
Thanks.
Yeah, and our next indicated speaker is Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether Councillor O'Neill seconded Councillor Jackson's proposal. If she didn't, I'm happy to do so. Councillor Sean Mooney actually spoke to me about this report and raised similar concerns as what Councillor Jackson raised. Obviously, we support the rollout of this campaign across our city and district, but I think we have to also be practical and make sure that we're planting these trees in the right place. And the feedback that we're getting in the Top of Hill area from constituents and from community organisations, and one thing in order is that the site that is indicated on the map may not be the right spot. So we would be happy for to work along with officers and community organisations within that area to find an appropriate spot, because as I understand it, there's plans for a master plan within that site, and people are looking to try and develop that land. So whilst we support the planting of trees, we have to plant them in the right place. So I'm happy to second Councillor Jackson's proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Chair,
Thank
I'm happy we take that forward. There's no issues with that at all.
No problem. Thank you, Karen. Our next indicated speaker is Alderman Devaney.
You, Chair, and just to join with the rest and welcome the initiative, and we know the importance of planting trees and the benefits of trees being planted in the council area. And I do agree with some of the rest of the speakers when the decisions are being made where the trees are to be planted. I think there needs to be consultation with the different stakeholders and community groups that they are planted in the right place. And I'm disappointed to hear that, you know, Councillor Jackson here, an area where we had 2,000 trees planted, and look, they have been either pulled out or damaged or destroyed or taken away. I think it's disappointing to hear that, but we support the recommendation coming forward here and that consultation with we support the proposal as well, that there's wide consultation where they're planted, just because of the reason we've heard there that 2,000 trees were planted and look, weren't allowed to grow. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Morris. Members, the proposal from Councillor Jackson, it should be up on the, or it was anyway, up on the screen in front of you, and he's also put it onto the chat box there for members in WebEx. I'm not seeing any opposition to it or hearing any opposition to it, so are members content that we send the recommendation to full council and that we move on now to item 12. Okay, members, item 12, keeping in keeping in tandem with our trees.
Chair, I think it's item 13, and I'll take that if you're happy with that.
Yeah,
And members.
Queen's Canopy.
Yeah, thank you. And the purpose of this report is to seek members' approval to endorse the Queen's Green Canopy project, which was launched in May of this year. And the Lord Lieutenant of the city has written to the Chief Executive seeking council support for the campaign. And we advise that we bring this to committee in September. And it's part of a UK-wide tree planting initiative created to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee by inviting people to plant a tree for the Jubilee. And members, a copy of the proposal is attached at Appendix 1. Members, again, this fits with our green infrastructure plan, and it's also consistent with DAERA's ambition of planting 18 million trees as well. So members, we're recommending today that we endorse the Queen's Green Canopy, and basically as part of this the Woodland Trust would provide saplings to schools and communities in order to plant the trees. Happy to take any comments that members have. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I have Alderman Hussey here first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Karen. Just like item 12, I welcome this initiative. It's I would regard as a parallel initiative, and you know, for us not to endorse it would actually be hypocritical following the previous comments that we've had with regard to tree planting, etc. And I note the difficulties that Councillor Jackson referred to there with community consultation. But I suppose when we look further into this, this is not council planting these trees. This is people requesting the materials from the Queen's Green Canopy, and you know, it's a community led as to where these will actually be planted. And as I say, I see it as a parallel scheme to that of item 12, and the two go hand in hand. So I'm very content to see this on the agenda, and will be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. I have Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me. And just like the previous speaker, I would like to endorse the recommendation. And once again, it's about tree planting. And we talked earlier in item 12 about the benefits and around it. And as Alderman Hussey has quite rightly said, it's requesting schools and communities out there to get the saplings and grow. And I think that's a good idea, because what it does, it educates, when you hit the schools, or when schools plant trees, they're nearly in their ownership, and it's good to educate the children and around the environment and the benefits of trees. But happy to just endorse it as well, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I'm all for planting trees, and whatever motivates you to plant a tree, I think that's all well and good. But again, I can't help but see the irony in this, given that Ireland was one of the most heavily forested regions in Europe. But now from massive deforestation, we only have 7% forest coverage, and only 0.05% of that is native woodland. But I think we need to look at the empire and the British Empire and Ireland as the first colony, and the felling of our forests, and which is largely down to the industrial development of the fuel hungry Britain in the 16th century, and also the vast clearance of forests for agricultural purposes, which continued during the plantation period, and now with the Jubilee, the empire is back to plant trees. So I think a lot more needs to be done in terms of repairing that damage and the devastation of Ireland of natural resources, and across the world, really, where countries have been pillared for natural resources for the profit and the betterment of the empire. And I think more needs to be done. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. And the irony hasn't been lost on myself either. But members seem to be content with the recommendations there. So our final items open for information is, items on the agenda is item 14, River Basin Management Plan. Then we have items 15 to 24, which are for information only. But if any member has anything to ask, officers will be happy to answer any questions. So item 14.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll take this. And the purpose of this report is to seek members' approval for the contents of our response to DERA's consultation on Cycle River Management Plan for the Northwestern Nabe, Ban and Northeastern River Basins District. And members, this document sets out targets and actions on how to improve our water environment in Northern Ireland over the next 6 years. And members, the background to it is laid out in your report. And members, the key issues relate to the need, I suppose, to improve water quality, and that the fact that really more action does need to be taken, and the draft plan aims for a working target of 70% of the river bodies being classed as in good status, and then they suggest that this will be achieved by linking in with other existing strategies, such as the Sustainable Water Long-Term Strategy for Northern Ireland, Living with Water, and some emerging strategies around green growth, agricultural policy, etc. So members, our officers have been engaging with DERA on a number of forums in relation to this particular matter, and have actually drafted a response on behalf of Council, which is attached as Appendix 1 to your report. And members, were recommending today that we approve this draft response, but again, of course, members will take any comments that any members have that you wish to be added to the consultation response. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. Just give me a second here to check chat box. Councillor O'Neill has indicated to come on there. Go ahead, Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. So yeah, like I think like I welcome that they're looking at the health of our rivers, that they are looking at this, and I think it's good that we have responded. I think the health of our rivers ties very much into our rights of nature stance, and our recognition of the rights of our rivers to be healthy and to exist and to thrive, and healthy waters are essential for us, but also for nature to survive. And I think we really need to look at the things that make our rivers unhealthy, such as chemical discharges from industry and agricultural runoff. And I'm not sure what's happening with sewage in the north anymore. You might be able to let me know, because I know there was a change. But I think for question 9, there was mention there of the contaminated land that hasn't been remediated, and have a risk posed by future flooding. And I think we could add to that question, just in terms of the contaminated land regime for the north here, because the Stormont Executive, like since 1997, that land regime policy, like with the successive environmental ministers have sat in this and not implemented this contaminated land regime, and it's very, very neglectful on the part of DAERA and its predecessors, because what that means is we might not even know where all the contaminated land is located. We obviously have the worst example in our council region with Maboy, which I know is on the agenda in the information bit. But if we don't know where this contaminated land is, then how are we going to know how it will be impacted by climate change? And this is a serious risk, and it's a serious risk locally, but it's a serious risk, across the north. And I know that DAERA is currently considering how it will implement these legislative provisions, but I think this is an important addition to question 9, given that we mention that and given how relevant it is to our council area. Thank you.
Chair, if members are happy that we add to the response on question 9 that the council believe that the department need to enact the relevant legislation, we can do that if members are happy.
Yeah, I don't see any opposition forthcoming, Karen. Members, that brings us to the last item on the agenda. As I said, items 15 to 24 for information. Alderman Devaney has indicated he wants to bring up items 18 and 19. I don't have any other indicated speakers as yet. So members, after we deal with this, I'm suggesting we have a comfort break of 10 minutes before we go into our confidential. So go ahead, Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And item 18, it's the only place I think I could raise it. I have no problem with the recommendation. I've read that there was very, very low usage of this recommendation. But Chair, through yourself, I just wanted to raise the issue in around those red phone boxes that we have in rural areas and other areas. And I have one in Killycore Avenue that I've been in discussions with Tony Monaghan on, and around that. And look, what I was trying to find out, what part can we as a council play in retaining those red phone boxes? I know the group out there that I'm talking about have asked to, there hasn't been I think there have been about 2 phone calls made over probably 5 years on it, and they'll be very anxious to see the red phone box retained, because they do say it's a landmark for them. So it is the phone box. And how do we as a council support them in retaining that? Because they want to turn it into a sort of a library where books can be left, and additional books. You take one, you leave one, or whatever the case may be. And just on item 18 or item 19, Chair, just very briefly, and look, I see the information back about the maintenance of the bridge. I know, I think it was Councillor Jackson made that proposal, and I made an amendment to raise the issue once again in around the odour at the waterside end of the bridge. And I know, Chair, that in 2012 there were new pumps put in there to deal with that issue, and we've thought that we had dealt with the issue. And I had raised the issue with Northern Ireland Water, and I was told that there was a huge amount of work to be done somewhere in the vicinity of the Spencer Road car park there, in behind the flats. And I've never got any information whether that work was carried out. And I have quite a number of people that have asked me to raise the issue regarding the odour once again, because I have witnessed it over this last week quite a number of times, Chair, and I think it's about time we had some action on it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. Karen, do you want to take those there? And then I'll bring in Councillor Jackson then, because he wants to raise item 19 as well. Councillor O'Neill's indicated 21 and 23, so I'll take her then next in line, if she doesn't mind.
Yeah, Chair, just in terms of the payphones, what I'd suggest is, members, we, through Alderman Devaney, we can contact and engage with the community group members, because clearly we will need to bring back a report to members in terms of any potential implications for council. You know, clearly we want to support community groups in any way we can. However, you know, we would need to set the policy direction of council in relation to this matter, and members can only do that when they are fully aware of any potential implications in terms of cost, maintenance, insurance, etc., in relation to these particular facilities. So, members, if you are happy, we will engage with Alderman Devaney through him, the group themselves, and bring a further report back to members on that. And in terms of item 19, Chair, we're happy to contact Northern Ireland Water to ask for an update in relation to the odour issues in and around Craigavon Bridge.
Thanks for that, Karen. Councillor Jackson, item 19 as well.
Good Chair, and I would echo the comments from Alderman Devaney. The smell at the Victoria Road end of the Craigavon Bridge can be quite overpowering at times, and it is an issue that's been raised over many years, and NA Water have give indications that they were taking steps to address it, but the problem, if anything, seems to be getting worse, and it is. And for many people, the first impression that they see of our city or smell of our city whenever they're visiting. So it's an issue that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. And on the same vein, I know and just note the response from the Department of Infrastructure, and I'm not surprised at the response from the Department of Infrastructure, because it's an almost identical response that we received via, it was a question to the Minister via Martina Anderson when she was an MLA a few months ago, and it was around the ongoing work, the commitment they work with council to address the problem. And I know from my conversations with council is that council's limited in terms of what we can do to help they help clean that part of the bridge, because our equipment it doesn't lend itself to get in around, particularly that lower deck. And I'm just noting the comment around that the department will continue to work with council, and I just want to explore that a bit further. What work has the department been doing with council? Has there been any? Because ultimately this asset belongs to the department. It's a responsibility of the department, and it's great if council can assist, but it shouldn't be left to council. They maintain it and they clean up the mess that's left behind. So I'm just querying, has there been any developments in terms of the equipment that's available to council to clean the bridge, or is there any resources coming from the department? Because when we're hearing that the department's going to continue to work with council, I just wouldn't mind hearing what work they did has the department been doing with council to help clean up that area. Thanks, Chair.
Chair, happy to take that. We have been in discussion with DFA on what support we can provide to them. Now, the issue, as the councillor refers to, is on the walkway on the lower deck, and we can't access that unless the carriageway is closed. So that's one option we've put to them, and that needs to be a road closure for us to get a mechanical sweeper on with the hose to go in and across the pipes. But that needs a road closure to do that. They have suggested that we bring one of our smaller sweepers across that bridge. We've gone back and asked for some details on what the loading is on that footpath and whether our machines are safe enough to take across. We also require that footpath to be closed if we're going to do that, and that's because if we go across on a machine, we must drive from one end to the other. We can't stop and reverse. So the only way we can achieve that as well is for the department to put in a footpath closure. So we're waiting on them to confirm the loading on the bridge and whether our equipment is suitable to go across on the path. And the alternative is to close the carriageway. And those are actions that the department need to take. So we can, providing we get the information, or that they're willing to put the road closure, and we can support that, but it's very much back to them to provide that information to us. Again, we have limited capacity and capability to do it, but where we can, we will assist.
Yeah, Chair, and just to add to that, I note that the correspondence mentions that they are currently procuring inspections in relation to informing a future repair and refurbishment plan. And members, we are happy on your behalf if you want to engage with the Divisional Roads Manager to find out where that's at. And again, they've said they would engage with us on the findings and future plan. So happy to do that if members want us to.
Thanks for that, Karen. I'm not seeing anybody indicating any opposition to it, so I take it members are content with that course of action. Our next items is items 21 and 23, and I have Councillor O'Neill who's raised those two items, but I have also Alderman Kerrigan on item 21 as well. So I'll take Councillor O'Neill, then Alderman Kerrigan on item 21, and then Councillor O'Neill again on item 23. So go ahead, Councillor O'Neill.
Chair. So yeah, I really welcome this report. It has helped to set the scene in terms of what the next steps are for the rights of nature. But it hasn't obviously gone further in exploring possibilities. Because I would hope that that report, a more detailed and ambitious report, is going to come following the engagement with stakeholders and local communities, and I look forward to seeing those happen in October and November, as the report has said. And just for note as well, the Environmental Justice Network Ireland have just released a short video on the rights of nature, preceding like a longer documentary about the rights of nature movement here in the north, tying it in with the global movement. So I think that's something which will be a key education tool as we explore this possibility for our council area. And the report says that we can't do anything legally about this, but again, I don't think we can say that just yet, because we haven't yet explored those possibilities. And there are legal experts. There's legal expertise from the Centre for Democratic and Environmental Rights in the United States who have engaged in liaison with Friends of the Earth here in the north. And you also have Queen's University School of Law, who are doing a lot of work and looking at rights of nature, particularly from like a council-based approach and things. So I'm not sure that we can say that just yet, because we have not explored that. And I think whenever we do the stakeholder engagement sessions, I think it'll be really interesting to see how we can draw that out. I think what's missing in the report, which was part of the motion, is drafting a declaration for the rights of nature for our local council area, and that really is essential. That's what the hoped for outcome is from the workshops. But obviously there'll need to be a wee bit of work that goes into that, and then also looking at further work in a report with recommendations on a rights of nature approach for council that would that would be able to really make the difference and bring rights of nature into fruition really for our council area. So and just sorry, the other thing I forgot to mention, which was missing in the report, which is really exciting, is that the rights of nature tide is moving fast, with Omagh and Fermanagh District Council having also passed a similar rights of nature motion, and it's now also going through 2 other councils in the north. Belfast Council, it's going to committee, and do you know the name of what other council it's been brought to has escaped me just now, apologies, but it just goes to show you the flow of that motion and of that concept across the north. So I think it's really exciting, and we really set that in motion. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Karen, or do you want to come back on that, or you have any comments to make on it?
Yeah, well, Chair, just I think it would be prudent for Council to undertake the public engagement sessions before we actually lay out a charter for Council. And clearly, obviously, in order to ensure that we're taking forward this piece of work diligently and considering all the aspects of it, we will need to clearly lay out both the advantages for Council and also any potential costs for any decisions that members may take in relation to this, because clearly, obviously we hope to get really good engagement on this, which will inform the options available to members on this. But it has potential policy implications for Council, so we just need to make sure that we have all the information, which again the public consultation will enable us to have, so that we can bring that to you for your consideration and decision making process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. Alderman Kerrigan, you're looking on there, item 21 as well.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in. Just seeking clarification. Yes, I see the report and see the detail on it. Just a couple of very brief questions there in relation to it there. Yes, the public meetings, and we hope that we do get a good community engagement in regards to that. Just seeking clarification. Is this in regards predominantly to ground that is within the remit of Council? I'm just thinking, I mean, obviously the largest landowners within our council area would be in the agricultural sector, and most of that there, there's going to be massive changes with the Department of Agriculture, and again, most of the farming sector, to be truthful, as the Department of Agriculture beats the drum, they kind of follow the tune there in regards to it, because it's your subsidy is based on that. So, and again, we see that will go down on environmental end, and there will be there will be funding in place for farmers in regards to maybe letting a wee bit of ground go wild, or planting trees and this, that and the other, that sort of stuff, which will be encouraging and pushing more towards nature and letting bits go natural again. But I'm just wondering there, are we going to be putting on this group here, are we going to be trying to do a dictate as to what farmers can do with their own ground? I wouldn't be content with that. Trying to force something in on, when it's just mentioned within the council area. I would be minded that the farmers' land is between them and the Department of Agriculture more than us, and I just would have some concerns in regards to, potentially implications further down the line there for, when it's mentioned into the planning processes there, maybe some young farmers there trying to get a site on the ground, and depending on what we put in with this rights of nature here, we could be scuppering them. So I'm just, what those concerns there, and it's just that the appropriate weight is given to the landowners. That if the farming sector here comes up and the individual farmers come in with concerns in relation to that's given the appropriate weight, as they're the landowners, they're the land custodians, rather than being dictated to by others. So that's just my thoughts on it. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, just coming back on that, then clearly, members, that is obviously what the next steps would be for council, is to undertake the engagement and then be able to work with members in terms of laying out possible options for how this might actually be taken forward by council. And indeed, you know, as we've mentioned as well, you know, what is the role for council and what is the role for central government in terms of this. But members, I think really it would be important and prudent for us, as we've laid out in the report, to undertake a wide consultation and allow people to feed into that before we come back with possible options for council to decide on. And we can take that forward as and when we've undertaken the consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. And finally, Councillor Neil on item 23.
Thanks, Chair. So, my boy, thank you for that paper. You know, obviously, you know, this is a paper from DAERA, so, you know, I'm not sure if you can answer the questions, but I know there was a proposal in a previous council meeting just about the criminal trial. Was that last week that had, you know, come up again in terms of looking at a date? I don't know if, because obviously the paper came out before that date, so I don't know if you know any updates around the criminal trial and the progress on that, and if there was if we had any response back from the convener of the courts as to you know when that might go ahead, given that we had written a letter to him as proposed in a previous council meeting, and I think, you know, the meaningful engagement you know, with the Maboy stakeholders is such an important point. You know, we've had several stakeholders who have just disengaged you know, recently, and also other stakeholders who have disengaged in the last few years. And these are campaigners who really care about the health and well-being of their local community and of the health of their local environment. And they're just totally exacerbated. And like, I feel their exacerbation as well, given that, you know, Maboy is still sitting there as an, you know, an absolutely environmentally devastated area. And, you know, there's still no remediation work that has actually been done about it, and it's sitting there as a massive risk. You know, we were talking about, you know, the health of our rivers there earlier, and, you know, the River Faughan runs alongside the Maboy super dump, and you know, the risks in terms of, I know again the report has said, you know, they test the water regularly, the water's safe and things, but we know with the more extreme weather conditions there still is a real risk of the River Faughan being contaminated, which is a source of our drinking water. And, you know, and this is an issue that won't go away and can't go away until, you know, something is done about it. And, you know, the Stormont executive is sitting on this. There's been no public inquiry, and there has been no on the ground actual work. There's been no urgency or commitment to you know, cleaning Maboy up, and it, you know, it just is such a health risk for the local community here. So, you know, I don't know if council is liaising with DAERA around the stakeholder engagement. You know, I know that stakeholders would like to be part of the thinking in terms of the remediation, and it's been a constant, like, you know, call on DAERA for, you know, for these meetings. You know, they want to, you know, they have to initiate those meetings rather than those being something meaningful and regular. So I'm not sure if council have been part of that thinking around how can there be better stakeholder engagement. Thanks.
Chair, just to provide members, we don't have any further update from the department in relation to the trial date. We haven't received anything from DAERA. We, and again, happy to note the comments of members, and we will make them, make DAERA aware of them and ask them, can they be addressed in their update to the next committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Karen. Members, we have no further indicated speakers. So I propose that we'll take a comfort break now. It's 6:25 nearly, so we'll say 15 minutes. I think 10 minutes mightn't be enough, but if we come back at 6:20, and just before we leave, can we just have a proposer and seconder to go into confidential, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
That's Councillor
John Boyle.
Councillor Boyle seconded. Thank you, members. So see you back here at 20. Thank you.